All right. Hi. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the episode number 11 of Super 30. Thank you very much for joining us. A little bit of a glitch out there at the beginning of the video playing. Yes, that's what technology does. But back to episode number 11. Thank you very much for joining us today. And we are back in to people who are joining us for the first time. The Refrigeration and Air Conditioning Trade Association is a 73-year-old trade body which represents the MSMEs in the field of HVAC&R. And Super 30 has been a series of programs which we have been bringing, which is more related to policy matters that affect our industry. And we're very fortunate that CEEW has been helping us put these contents out there for all the business owners. And today we have Mr. Sonal Kumar from CEEW, who is here with us today to talk about the circularity of the refrigerants. And actually, I'll let him speak about it so you will understand what it all means about sustainability and the impact towards business. So, Mr. Kumar, thank you for taking time out for being with us today. And over to you for the details on your content today.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Panika, and I hope I am audible and visible to all of you. A warm good evening to all the RATA members and others who have joined today to hear this. So today I will be speaking about circular economy and its relevance to the cooling sector. So I hope my screen is visible to all of you.
Yes, Mr. Kumar, we can see your screen. Please go ahead. The stage is all yours.
Thank you. So I will start with a brief introduction of CEEW. So it's Asia's leading policy research institution, and it uses data, integrated analysis, and strategic outreach to inform and explain and change the use, reuse, and misuse of resources. And we work across various verticals. I particularly work in the sustainable cooling sector. So with this, I come to the topic of this today's session, and we will cover this session in this topic in two sessions. So today we will be discussing about the broader concepts of circular economy, what is life cycle impacts, and the extended producer responsibility, and then we will discuss how these things are relevant to bring circularity in the cooling sector, and particularly from the material use and also the refrigerant management. And in the next session, we will go deeper and discuss what are the global best practices for management of refrigerants, and also what are the developments happening in India, and then what it would mean for the businesses in India. So what challenges and opportunity it will pose for the Indian businesses. So building the case for circularity. So this is the trend of material consumption in globally. So the quantity of raw material which we are consuming for meeting our day-to-day needs, so it has increased fourfolds during the last 5 decades. So, and we have reached the 100 billion ton marks first time in 2020, and then it is expected to increase twofolds in the next 3 decades. So that means we are consuming a lot of materials from the earth, and out of that only 8 to 9% are recycled. So that means around out of 192 to 93 billion tons of materials we are consuming fresh, and it includes all ores, minerals, as well as the farm produce which we consume as food. The second data point I will be using is regarding the Earth Overshoot Day, and it is basically, it denotes the day by which in a year we consume the biological resources which the Earth can generate in a year. So you can see this year it was on 28th July. That means by 20th July we have consumed all the biological resources which the Earth could have produced during the entire year. So that means currently the rate at which we are consuming, it requires 1.75 Earth to generate those resources. And if we follow the same trajectory, so by 2050, we would be requiring 2.3 planet to meet our resources. And I highlighted these data points to emphasize that we cannot continue in this manner, and we have to basically think of ways where we can sensibly and responsibly consume our resources. And that is why the concept of circular economy comes into picture. I will also bring into the discussion the topic of climate change. So how climate change is also relevant to this. So one is the material consumption, which we discussed, and then the climate change. So currently, our common practice is to follow this linear economy where it is called take, make, use, and waste. So where we are basically taking resources from the nature, manufacturing products which we need, using those products, and then throwing it away at the end of its life. And the problem arises when we are extracting more than what can be regenerated. We are consuming a hell lot of energy and emitting a lot of pollutants during the manufacturing and use of those products, and at the end we are generating too much of waste, and a large part of it is also hazardous and toxic. So these are creating problems, and there are estimate which shows that 62% of the global carbon dioxide or GHG emissions comes from during the extraction, processing, and manufacturing of these goods. So that means if we reduce the material use, or if we consume sensibly, so that means we will also reduce our carbon footprints, and it is also relevant to the climate change. So then what is circular economy? So basically circular economy is a concept which tries to decouple the growth with our resource consumption. So we are a large part of the world is still developing, and they need a lot of product, resources, infrastructure for their daily needs. So how we can going forward in future, how we can decouple our growth with this material requirement, so that with minimum material requirement we can maintain our growth trajectory. And this is what circular economy talks about. So we have to minimize resource input, we have to minimize our waste, we have to minimize emissions, we have to reduce energy leakages happening during the entire life cycle. So so before going deeper into the circular economy, I will also bring into the concept of life cycle impacts, because now a lot of policymakers are focusing on circular economy as well as looking at the impacts during the entire life cycle of a product or a process. And it is called cradle to grave, where we start looking from the very beginning when we are extracting material from the earth, processing it, then manufacturing it into a certain product, using those products, and at the end how we are recycling or treating or disposing that as waste. So this is called the life cycle approach of assessing the impacts of any product. And there can be various parameters. So I have written some examples. So on these parameters, the life cycle impact can be assessed, like how much virgin materials a product has consumed during its lifetime, or how much energy it has consumed, how much emissions it has produced, or how much hazardous waste it will create at the end of its life, or if it goes into the landfill, so what will be its impacts on the landfill use. So there can be other parameters also, depending upon what we are trying to assess. Accordingly we can choose the parameters. Some of these parameters, like energy use, if I take an example, so it is consumed at the beginning when we are extracting materials and manufacturing the product, as well as in some cases, like in case of air conditioner, air energy is used in the operation also. So there is one-time use, generally called as embodied energy, and there is recurring use also, which is called operational energy. In some cases, like use of virgin materials, it happens once at the beginning when we are producing that product. So then there is another parameter. So it's basically measuring annual impact of any product, and it is basically the total impact of a product divided by its lifetime. So why I'm showing this equation is suppose we take an example of air conditioner, and when we manufacture it, so it consumes certain amount of raw materials, so plastics, steel, copper. These materials goes into manufacturing of it, and it goes one time. So if we increase the lifetime, so if we design a product such that we can increase its durability, increase its lifetime, so then we can reduce its lifetime impact, so the annual impacts can be reduced. then there is energy use. So the energy consumed in manufacturing of it, in the manufacturing industry. So if we improve our processes to improve energy efficiency in the processes, so then we can reduce its use. If we increase the life of the product, then also its impact can be reduced. And if we make more efficient conditioners, so that the recurring use of energy is less, so then also we can reduce its energy use. So these are 3-4 factors which impacts or which basically impacts how much a product will be impacting the environment on different parameters. So once when we analyze, or when we will be analyzing the life cycle impacts, we have to consider all these things. There can be trade-offs also, like suppose innovation happens and we would be able to improve the efficiencies of air conditioner substantially. So then there would be a case that we discard our old conditioner and go for a new one. So the energy consumed in manufacturing a new one can be offsetted very quickly because of the improvement in the energy efficiency. So it helps us in making decisions, like when to how we can basically decisions related to how we can reduce the life cycle impacts. So now coming to the concept of circular economy, so it basically tries to reduce all these impacts during the entire life cycle of the product, and it starts from the design stage. So how we can consider environment during the designing process itself. So and the factors which includes are how we can use less harmful materials so that it will not cause hazardous or toxic waste at the end, how we can make more durable products, how we can utilize recyclable products in that, or the products which is coming from recycling, how we can improve the product efficiency. So all these factors come at the design stage. So it starts at from very beginning when we are designing a product. Then during the production, how we can maintain the resource efficiency. Resource efficiency means minimizing the use of all the resources, whether it is material, energy, or water, or any other thing, and reduce the waste during the entire its life cycle. And then at the end, basically recycling to the extent possible. So when at the end of the life, recycling a great part of that product, then safely destroying the hazardous and toxic materials coming out of that, and then utilizing it, recycling it such a way that a large part of it can be utilized in the production, so that we can minimize the virgin raw material requirement. So this is the concept of circular economy as a whole. So looking at the life cycle impacts from looking at minimizing the life cycle impact from the very beginning of the design stage. Then there is a third concept which is now being followed across the world, and now India is also adopting it, and it is called extended producer responsibility. So it's a strategy to implement circular economy, and there has been various efforts and gradual improvement in how we can basically implement circular economy and minimize life cycle impacts. And now we are at a stage where we are using this extended producer responsibility strategy, and it is basically an approach where the responsibility of managing the products post its consumer stage is basically fixed on the producer itself. So those who is producing that product, so it is their responsibility, both physical and financial responsibility. So physical responsibility means handling the equipment after it has been discarded by the consumer, or taking it back. And then financial responsibility means bearing out all the cost involved in recycling of that material. So this is the EPR where producer is responsible, and it is a shift from the traditional process where municipal bodies are usually used to be responsible, and now we are shifting the responsibility to producer. And why it is happening like so? Because producer is in a best position to look at the entire life cycle, and basically he has the best knowledge of the product, and he is the one who is able to improve processes at the design stage itself, so that the cost at the end can be minimized. So now, because he is responsible for the cost involved also, so now it makes economic sense for the producer to implement all these green production processes and consider the environmental factors at the design stage itself. So, and this is now being adopted at various countries in Europe, in India, and the government of India has come up with e-waste management rules, and it also basically uses this principle to fix the responsibility on the producers of electronic and electrical waste. And if you go through that, so it has basically also put certain targets for different producers, like how much of the product they are putting in the market they recycle, and it also has a time lag. So this is the study which is now being implemented across the globe. India talks about refrigerant, so it is working dealing with e-waste, and similarly the battery waste management rule which has come up recently. So it also based on this EPR principle. Now coming to the cooling products, so the products we use for cooling. So, and if you look at the broader life cycle impacts of all those cooling products, and here we are looking on the material use and the refrigerants. So, during the raw material extraction and processing, so it uses virgin raw materials, and certain energy is consumed in extraction and processing of materials, and then there are associated emissions because of energy use. Similarly, manufacturing a product, so it uses energy and emits pollutants. Then distribution, use and reuse. So and use and reuse, so it has energy use and emissions because we need electricity or other energy sources to operate those cooling devices. There are also emissions associated with the refrigerants leakage, because the refrigerants which we use or which we are using from the past, so it has some of them have ozone depleting substances, or some of them have high global warming potential. So emissions are also due to the refrigerant leakage during the operation of equipments. And then waste generated at the end of life. So when we discard our devices, so it generate waste, and also the refrigerants accumulated in those devices. So these are generally vented off in the environment. So this cause environmental impacts because of that. So these are the broader life cycle impacts. Now coming to why we need circularity in the cooling sector. So we are also experiencing that global warming is happening, and the incidents of heat waves are now becoming more and more frequent, and we are getting now more longer warm seasons. So the need for cooling is uh, increasing. Also, cooling is also linked with productivity uh, and in certain cases to our well-beings. So that is why more and more people are going for cooling devices. uh, and there are certain estimates which shows that there will be multifold increase in the demand of in the cooling demand. And just to give you some perspective, so the air conditioner stock is expected to increase to 1 billion by 2050. There is another number which says that 2017 we are basically purchasing 3 to 5 crores of air conditioner per year, which will increase to maybe 35 or 36 crores of air conditioner by 2037. So this is the kind of multifold increase we are foreseeing in the cooling demand. Uh, with this cooling demand, there will be also be increase in the demand for refrigerants. And the table on the right hand side, it shows that how the refrigerant demands will is expected to grow in the future. So this will have two impacts. So because we are at a low level of penetration of cooling devices, so going forward, we will be consuming a lot of materials to produce these devices. A lot of energy will also go into that to produce as well as to operate, and it will also have a huge stock of refrigerants. So that is why the circularity becomes more important for the cooling sector. So to look at to basically ensure circularity and reduce life cycle impacts, and we have to start now, and that is why it becomes more important. So the e-waste rule, so it is a step forward in that direction, but it currently talks only about the material waste coming out of any cooling devices, and mostly from refrigerators and room air conditioners. The vehicle scrappage policy to certain extent talk about the materials used in vehicles, but both of these policies do not talk about the refrigerants. uh, Yeah, and what is currently in practice is we are basically using refrigerant in a new device. Then a device comes into operation. After certain stage during the operation, because of leakage, this refrigerant are going into the environment, or at the time of decommissioning those equipments, we are venting it out into the environment. So basically, we are not recovering or managing those refrigerants at the end of its life. So that is not happening. Material to some extent is now being taken care of by the e-waste rules, but we have just started on that. So if you look at what circularity means in terms of refrigerant, so it means like we will be producing refrigerant. It will be used in certain in cooling devices, and then after that, it will be recovered and collected and stored as per the standards. And that recovered and stored refrigerants, we can either recycle them or reclaim that and reuse in the existing equipments. And once they are in a stage that it cannot be recycled or reused or reclaimed, so then we have to destroy it so that we can uh, minimize its environmental impact. So it will have certain global warming potential or ozone depleting potential. So how we can destroy it safely. So this is, if we do it like this, so this is basically this is how we can bring circularity in the refrigerant and manage it well. And there are certain countries who are doing it. So why refrigerant management is important? So we must be aware that earlier we were using CFC gases. Now, because those have very high ozone depleting potential, so we have shifted to HCFCs. And we are again, because HCFCs has high global warming potential, so and to some extent ozone depleting potential also. So we are now implementing the HCFC phase out plan. We are currently in the stage 2, and we will soon start stage 3 of HCFC phase out plan. And we have also ratified the Kigali Amendment, and post 2028, we will also be implementing phase out of hydrofluorocarbons, which have high global warming potential. But it will take certain time, because post 2028, we will be starting phase down of HFCs. But during this period, there will be a huge stock which will be accumulated in the cooling devices which are currently in use, or which will be added in the near future in the next few years. So how we will be managing those huge stock? Because if we even if we switch to low global warming potential gases, but there will be a huge stock accumulated in the existing equipments. So if we do not manage that at the end of their life, so it will going to create very adverse environmental impact. So that is why it is important to manage those refrigerant at the end of its life. And now we have started looking for it like how, what could be the ways where we can recover, reuse to the extent possible, or destroy it safely. So currently there is no mandate in India, but we are now looking at developing certain plan where we can do it. It will have certain challenges, but we are also interacting with various stakeholders to find a way where we can do it, and it should also make business sense for all of the stakeholders involved. So I will sum up my today's sessions here. So we have discussed about the concepts of circular economy, life cycle impacts, and the EPR, extended producer responsibility, and how those are being applied to different product segment to reduce its life cycle impacts and bring circularity into those products. And then we discussed why bringing circularity in the cooling sector is essential now. In the next session, we will be discussing about the global best practices in management of refrigerants. So how other countries are managing refrigerants at the end of its life. What are the developments happening in India in that direction? And once this, because this is a new thing, there is no mandate, and once it will come, so it will have certain challenges for the industry. It will ask the businesses in India to adopt certain changes, and it will also create business opportunities. So we will be discussing those also, like what would be the challenges involved and what kind of business opportunities it will present. So with this, I will conclude my talk now, and I will open the floor for some questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanal. Thank you very much for that fabulous information. And I don't know, how do you manage to just do it exactly in like 25, 26 minutes? We have a 30-minute event, but you just managed to pull it off just in time. But before I let you go, I think there's a lot of information that is there. I have two questions to ask you. These are questions which have come from our members. One is, when you talk about refrigerant recovery, it's expensive. And is there a way that you think the government should actually incentivize or subsidize these service providers so that they're motivated to make sure that there is a refrigerant recovery during the services process?
Yes, so it's a very important question, and particularly for the businesses who are involved in handling those refrigerant at different life cycle stages of the equipment. So, so we are also investigating into that. So we are looking at what are the practices other countries are following, and how we can adopt or customize and adopt to Indian conditions. Because in some cases the countries are very organized. Here we have a lot of unorganized and informal sector. So how we can basically incentivize so that it makes business sense for them also. So some of the examples I can share, but we will be developing this plan in the next 10 to 12 months, and we will have a lot of discussions with RATA members also to get their inputs. But there are some practices, like in some cases, in some countries, they basically put carbon tax at the beginning. So when you purchase any refrigerant, so they put carbon tax depending upon how much global warming potential it has. And then they use that money to fund recovery, recycling, destruction of those equipments, and whatever is left, so they refund it to the consumer. So because initially it is charged from the consumer, so it is called tax and refund scheme. So initially they utilize that money to fund, and the remaining they refund it to the consumer. In some cases, they collect it as a advanced recycling fee from the consumer itself. So the price is included in the product price, and they utilize that. In some cases, now people are basically trying to use carbon credits also. So the carbon footprint you are destroying, the carbon footprint, global warming potential a gas has. So if by destroying that, you can earn certain carbon credits. So different countries are using different mechanisms. So we are exploring that, and we will also be discussing with various stakeholders to find a way for India.
Amazing. So there's one more thing, just an add-on to that. We just have about 2 minutes, but I think you can throw light on this also. See, there are certain laws revolving around storage of refrigerants. It has to be in a certain capacity. So when you recover, you're actually going to store it back into a cylinder. It could be, not necessarily has to be a very large cylinder. It can be a small one. The mechanisms of handling these cylinders, there are laws which actually prevent this from happening. How do you actually bring about a change in those laws? Do you think those have to change before we actually start pushing for this?
Yes. What I was explaining, that our work has 2-3 aspects. So one is looking at the business sense, so that it has not to be dependent upon subsidies. The second is on the R&D thing, and third is on the policy aspects. So looking at what is the policy landscape in India, what are the policies, and whether any policies or rules is there which is basically preventing it for happening. So, and similarly, the role of standards also. So if refrigerant management has to happen, so there should be conducive policy environment for that. So so suppose someone is recovering 400 grams or 500 grams of refrigerants from a room air conditioner. So how that will be stored and transported. So whether there are any laws for it, whether that laws prevent it from doing that, or it is supporting that, and then basically advocating with the policy makers that if this has to happen, so what are our recommendations on the policy front.
Amazing. I guess that's only then that whole strategy of plan can be worked, because today the laws don't permit it, or even though the intent is there, but the law is not permitting. Absolutely great. So fantastic information. We're just about done with our time slot, and that's a lot of valuable information. And Mr. Kumar, we're going to catch up with you with the next episode, number 12, next month, as a continuous on the same topic. So thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you and CEEW for sharing their valuable time every month in disseminating policy matters that actually affect the HVAC&R business. Thank you very much, Mr. Kumar. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.